already in the meeting, in the webinar. Samuel?
Thank you very much, Prof. Mungai. I'd like to ask the attendees to actually change the naming, to change the naming, because I think we should have official names. We should have official names on the attendee side. So please just change your name, and then if it has HP, just click on it, right click on it, and then say rename, so that we have official name on the attendance list. I think we might, if there is any problem, we can use the chat section. I'll be very much available to assist. So please feel free and welcome to this webinar. Thank you. Prof. Mungai, you can take over.
Thank you very much. I want to begin by thanking everybody who has made it to the webinar, which is part of the webinar series to celebrate the University of Nairobi at 50, and also in the process to hear something about the Wangari Maathai Institute, which is hosting this. Now, I would like to thank our guests, starting with the Vice Chancellor. He will not be there because he's holding another international webinar which started at 2 and it will run up to 5. But he has recorded his remarks and his introduction to the speakers during this afternoon's webinar. Well, afternoon for us here in Kenya and maybe other parts of Africa, but for our chief guest, Professor Takeuchi, it is at night in Japan, wherever he is in Japan. It's 8 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the evening. So I also want to thank Professor Kazuhiko Takeuchi, who is our distinguished chair at the Wangari Maathai Institute. And Professor, we deeply appreciate your willingness to give this webinar, even at night from Japan side. I want to thank Professor Michieka and Professor Rukwaro. Both of them are discussants in today's webinar after the main presentation. I want to thank my colleagues, Professor Mudama and Professor Nyangito. Nyangito is the Dean of the Faculty of Agriculture. Professor Mudama is Deputy Director, Wangari Maathai Institute, because they will handle different aspects of this webinar. Myself, I'm David Mungai, Professor David Mungai, Director of the Wangari Maathai Institute for Peace and Environmental Studies. We look forward to a stimulating and interactive webinar. And with those few remarks, I won't say much about the Institute because most likely the Vice Chancellor will cover what I would have liked to say. So I would like to request Samuel to put on the Vice Chancellor's remarks and his introduction to the main speakers for today's webinar. Nadasaba? Yes.
Good afternoon to all of you. I am Professor Stephen Kiama Gitahi, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Nairobi. I'm pleased to welcome you all to today's webinar, which is organized by the Wangari Maathai Institute for Peace and Environmental Studies at the College of Agriculture and Veterinary Sciences. This is part of the Golden Jubilee celebrations since the University of Nairobi was established on 1st July 1970. The Wangari Maathai Institute was established by the University of Nairobi to immortalize the values of the 2004 Nobel Peace Laureate, Professor Wangari Maathai, who passed on in September of 2011. The webinar is therefore very fitting as we remember the late Professor Wangari for her deep vision and actions against resource degradation, bad governance, and sustainable exploitation of natural resources and lack of equity, leading to conflicts and societal stability. To this end, she revolutionized the philosophy of university teaching by emphasizing experiential learning of university curriculum both in principle and practice. The Wangari Maathai Institute programs use this model for delivery of curricula. We also remember her influential role in environmental stewardship, both at the continental and the global levels. I am particularly very happy today to note that the key speaker in this first webinar is the distinguished chair at the Institute, Professor Kazuhiko Takeuchi, all the way from Japan, thanks to the technological innovation. Professor Takeuchi, for your information, is the second distinguished chair of the Institute after the late Professor Wangari Maathai. I also note with appreciation that two of our renowned scholars, that is, Professor Ratemo Michieka and Robert Rukwaro, are taking part as discussants in this webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, let me have the honor to start my task today by introducing the guest speaker and the discussants. The guest speaker, Professor Kazuhiko Takeuchi, is currently the distinguished chair at the Wangari Maathai Institute for Peace and Environmental Studies. He is the president of the Institute of Global Environmental Strategies and a project professor at the Institute for Future Initiatives in the University of Tokyo, Japan. He served as a senior vice rector of the United Nations University and currently holds a position as a senior visiting professor at the United Nations University Institute for the Advanced Study of Sustainability. He has served inter alia as chair of the Central Environmental Council, Government of Japan, as vice president of the Science Council of Japan, as the editor-in-chief of the journal Sustainability Science, the Springer Nature. He has received numerous awards, including the Ishimura Prize in Science Against Global Warming for distinguished achievements in 2019. Otto Samuroto Award, Indonesia, in 2018. Japan Prize of Agricultural Science in 2017. Ishikawa Award of the City Planning Institute of Japan in 1994. Award of the Association of Rural Planning in Japan, again in 1994. Award of the Japanese Institute of Landscape Architecture in 1990. He specializes in landscape ecology, environmental studies, and sustainability science. He engages in research and outreach activities on creating eco-friendly environments for harmonized coexistence of the people and nature, especially focusing on Asia and Africa. Recently, ladies and gentlemen, he has been working towards establishing a global foundation for the developing the field of sustainability science, aiming to build a sustainable society. Now, I may introduce also the discussants. Professor Ratemo Michieka. Professor Ratemo Michieka is a professor of weed science and the environmental sciences in the Department of Plant Science and Crop Protection in the College of Agriculture and Veterinary Sciences, University of Nairobi. He is a founding Vice Chancellor of the Jomo Kenyatta University of Science and Technology and a former Director General of the Kenya National Environmental Management Authority, NEMA. He is an honorary secretary of the Kenya National Academy of Sciences, among other membership roles. The second discussant is Professor Robert Rukwaro. Professor Robert Rukwaro is in architecture and is a principal, the current acting principal of the College of Architecture and Engineering, University of Nairobi. He is the editor-in-chief of the African Habitat Review Journal. He's a practicing architect, and his research interests are in regional architecture. He has written numerous publications in architectural design. This also being the month when we celebrate the 9th anniversary of Professor Wangari Maathai death, it behoves on us to perpetuate the ideas and the philosophy of the late Professor Wangari Maathai. This institute, which has hosted this webinar today, continues to carry her legacy. The institute is founded on 3 pillars, namely good governance, sustainability, and the inquiry to yield cultures of peace. We welcome you all to join this webinar and contribute. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. I launch this webinar today.
Many thanks to our Vice Chancellor. So now we can proceed with our program. And I'd like to invite our first speaker, Professor Kazuhiko Takeuchi. Professor Takeuchi.
Thank you very much, Professor Mungai, for your kind introduction. And I very much appreciate the warm words from Vice Chancellor, Professor Kiama, with whom I met when I was visiting Nairobi. And I'm very pleased that I had a chance to see late Professor Maathai when we both attended the meeting organized by Terry in India. And I asked her to send a message to my journal, Sustainability Science, and she agreed and sent her very important message to us, insisting the importance of combining the sustainability with the peace building. And this is a base for my contribution for the Wangari Maathai Institute at the University of Nairobi. So today I would like to share with you about the sustainability challenges, particularly after the COVID-19. So I would like to share my slide with all of you. Please wait for a while. Can you see my slide?
Yes, I can at least.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes,
My
I
title
can.
of my presentation, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I put the logo of the celebrating 50 years anniversary of the University of Nairobi in my PowerPoint slide. And I once again congratulate that university outstanding and leading university in Africa, is now celebrating the 50 years anniversary. And my title of presentation is Establishing Decentralization and Connected Society for Localizing SDGs in the face of COVID-19. And I would like to share some thoughts that we have been developing in Japan and willing to collaborate with the other countries, including the countries in Africa, particularly the Kenya. Let me first start the influence of the COVID-19 pandemic to the global community. First, I would like to emphasize that the reason behind this pandemic is inappropriate relationship between the nature and people. Particularly, we became too close to the wildlife habitat. This was a cause of the COVID-19. And when we look at the expansion of COVID-19 to all over the world in such a short period of time, we recognize the negative aspect of the globalization and urbanization. And also, the massive movement of people is giving a negative impact. And so we need to revisit the current situation, showing the relationship between the nature and the people, and how we could recover the sound relationship between the nature and people will be a very important issues. And we need not say that this is not just the issues of pandemic, but this is the issues of global challenges. Here, I would like to mention that not only the infectious diseases, but also the climate change, biodiversity loss, and natural disasters, all these are coming from the same origin, showing the inappropriate relationship between the people and nature. And therefore, in order to solve these problems and to achieve the global challenges, such as the achievement of SDGs and the achievement of Paris Agreement, and also the post-Aichi biodiversity target, or we say post-2020 biodiversity framework, or Sendai framework on disaster risk reduction. So these need to be considered, particularly after the COVID-19. And also, I would like to emphasize that because the issues are so diverse and so fragmented, we need to take an integrated action toward the establishment of the sustainable society. Here, my institute, IGES, has been developing the response, recovery, and design framework we call the 3 R's in the post-COVID-19 era. Recovery and response at the short term. Response need to address to the emerging issues like health issues and medical issues and economic issues. And recovery issues, how we could establish rather appropriate society after the COVID-19 by understanding of the public health as well as the environmental issues. And then for the longer period of time, we need to consider how we could take a path toward the just transition. And we need to redesign our society, particularly the socio-economic systems, as well as the interaction between the people and nature toward the resilient and the sustainable world. What I would like to further emphasize in this dialogue is that not to take a one-by-one approach, starting from the short-term response to the medium-term recovery and long-term transition, but at the same time, at this moment, not only to consider the short-term responses, but also at the same time, we need to consider the long-term transition pathways so that on the one side, we could try to recover after the COVID-19, but at the same time, we will figure out the long-term strategy toward establishment of sustainable society. This is a diagram showing the case of climate-related disasters and response to the disasters, how we could mitigate the climate change, how we could adapt to the climate change. But then we need to redesign our society to meet the challenge of climate change, particularly in the post-COVID-19 era. EU, for example, is discussing the post-COVID-19 society with the recovery of the society by adopting of the concept of Green Deal, which aims to enhance the resilience against the climate change. And then for the longer period of time, we need to redesign our society. Particularly, I would like to emphasize that the fragile structure of the current system, for example, if we talk about the urban system, it's not appropriate because so many people are living in the dense conditions, and therefore the expansion of COVID-19 is quite significant in mega cities and other related areas. And therefore, we need to revisit the current structure of the urban and rural relationships, and we need to encourage the people to be scattered with keeping some distances so that they could live with a very comfortable situation while trying to maintain the safe environment among the people and with the environment. So this is an example how we could apply the concept of response, recovery, and rebuilding process in our scheme. This is one of the examples that I would like to share with all of you. And another example that we need to integrate rather fragmented activities. We have many global challenges as indicated by the 2030 agenda and the SDGs. And we have a Paris Agreement on climate change, and we are almost finalizing the individual countries' voluntary national contribution, but all the sum of the voluntary contribution is far beyond the achievement of 2.0 degrees target or 1.5 degrees target. By the current accumulation of the voluntary contribution will only allow the global warming to be continued. And therefore, we need to take an action, much stronger action, in order to prevent the climate change, global warming. And then we have IGES biodiversity target until this year, which was adopted in 2010 during the COP10 held in Nagoya. And this year, we plan to organize a meeting in Kunming, China, but this conference was postponed to the next year. And next year in Kunming, we will adopt the post-2020 biodiversity framework, which is very important in the field of biodiversity. And also we have a Sendai framework on disaster risk reduction, followed by the Kobe framework for disaster risk reduction. And we try to introduce the concept of the nature-based solution for disaster risk reduction. All these are interrelated, but unfortunately, these discussions are separately discussed in the global community. They have their own secretariat, they have their own conference of the parties, and they have their own scientists expertising in the various areas. However, the global challenges are so interrelated, and our resources, both the human and monetary resources, are limited. So we need to take integrated action in order to improve efficiency and to effectively utilize our resources. And another important aspect is that if you look at the local scale, city or local community, the issues are not separated. Issues are happening at the one place, and therefore it is not appropriate to differentiate the issues into the climate change, into the biodiversity, into the disaster. And the better we need to discuss among the different stakeholders, so we could find out the solution that we can apply to the various global challenges. So this is a basic ideas that we are emphasizing the importance of integration of the rather fragmented global discussions, and need to discuss on the local scale. What we are now discussing on the global scale, Antonio Guterres, UN Secretary General, of the, who is insisting the importance of transformative change. In order to achieve the very high profile target, we must transform our society. It is very clear. And this key message of the necessity of transformative change has been discussed in the various arenas, such as IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or UN FCCC on Climate Change, or EPBES, Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, as well as the UN Convention on Biodiversity. All these are insisting the importance of transformative change. But if you look at the current situation, we could not see any transformative change that can change our society. And therefore, we are still far below our ambitious target. Because of the COVID-19, for example, international air stopped and domestic movement of people stopped. Many economic activities stopped. As a result, the rate of the reducing of CO2 emission is less than half after the World War II. And this shows that we could reduce on the one side. On the other side, it is so difficult to reduce the CO2 emissions. So we are in the middle. So the question is, either we will move back to the previous situation, or we will use this situation as a trigger to transform our society towards sustainability. So either post-COVID-19 strategy could be combined with the global challenges. So this is the key for us to further discuss. For this purpose, before the COVID-19, I chair the council established in the Ministry of the Environment, and we could devise the basic environment plan to introduce the concept of SDGs, which means that this basic environment plan is not just an environment plan, but it's a plan try to integrate environment, economic, and social aspects, and so that the environment aspect will be included in our economy and society. And in order to materialize this idea, we propose the new concept of regional, circulating, and ecological sphere by combining of the low carbon society, resource circulating society, and society in harmony with nature. And I would like to explain to you later on this idea that we developed during the process of establishing this basic environment plan. This is a multi-level circulating and ecological sphere we proposed. When we talk about the community scale, we could recycle the materials, we could reuse the waste, and we could try to establish a society in harmony with nature so that people can contact with the nature in the shorter distance. This is an ideal way of localizing of the relationship between the people and nature. And then if you look at the regional scale, much larger circulation system need to be established. For example, if you talk about the resources circulation, like rare metal, it is not appropriate to recycle on the community scale, but must be recycled on the regional scale. So what we insisted is that there are appropriate scales of understanding the relationship between the people and nature based on the difference of the materials and the environmental conditions. This is a basic concept of multi-level circulating and ecological sphere. We call in short the CES. And this is a basic idea of decentralized but yet connected society, which will be established in Japan and in other parts of the world. This is a layer of our discussions, starting from the interaction between the people and nature based on the ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction or ecosystem-based adaptation against the climate change. And then comes the reduce, reuse, recycle, or we call 3Rs. It's a resource circulation system that we need to establish. And then comes to the decarbonization based on the establishment of a smart grid and introducing of a renewable energy and developing the energy saving systems. All these are related with the global discussion, UNFCCC, UNCBD, or UNEP resource panel. And also these are the related with the various sustainable development goals and targets. But I also would like to emphasize that we are not living in the closed society. We are living in the globalized society. And therefore, exchange of people, information, and technology must be open to the global community. And therefore, these decentralized structure need to be connected with the global community. And this is the idea, what we call this centralized and yet connected society, which aims to localize the concept of SDGs in the face of the COVID-19. So this is a basic idea that I would like to share with all of you. And also, we emphasize the importance of innovation. When we talk about innovation, many people are talking about the technological innovation. And this is true. Technological innovation is very important based on the scientific development of knowledge. And at the same time, I would like to emphasize the importance of social innovation or innovation of social systems, improving of the natural capital and improving of the human capital. In this discussion of innovation, I also would like to emphasize the importance of lifestyle innovation. When we talk about the climate change mitigation, how we could reduce the CO2 emissions, we will ask to the government to reduce the emissions. We could ask to the private sectors to reduce the CO2 emissions. But another important aspect is to ask the people to change their lifestyle so that the lifestyle could be energy saving and friendly to the environment. A harmonious situation will be established. So education, the working style, mobility, housing, healthcare, food system, all these are related with what we need to improve in terms of the innovation of society towards sustainability. Particularly here, I'm talking about how we could reduce the CO2 emissions toward the sustainable society. And in order to achieve these goals and targets, I also would like to share with you the importance of the governance. Particularly, even if we are talking about the local scale, we cannot or we should not ignore the global level collaboration. So international NGOs, the international negotiations are giving the strong impact to the activities on the ground. And therefore, these global, national, and local levels are not hierarchical, but need to be considered as the nested structure. So the local scale will give the very influential impact to the global scale. And global scale will give a very strong impact to the local scale. And so current structure of the governance system, subdividing the local and the global is not appropriate. So nested governance structure need to be established. I had a chance to attend the meeting organized by the Indiana University. They have the Ostrom workshop, which is a new institute with a commemoration of the late Eleanor Ostrom, who got the Nobel Prize on the economics, proposed the importance of commons. And this commons idea need to be visited. But these commons, in the current situation, must be not the single commons, but need to be a nested commons. And I'm very pleased that we could have a very good connection with the Indiana University, try to further develop these ideas. I would like to share with all of you about the development of this idea, which is also very important in the considering of the governance system in Africa, particularly in Kenya. Also, it is important to consider about the relationship between the rural areas and urban areas under the concept of the CES, or Circulating and Ecological Sphere. Previously, because of the globalization, goods are coming from outside. energies are coming from outside. And then local people consider that these are the sources coming from outside. And they, on the other side, forgot about the importance of the resources that they have in their areas. But after the COVID-19 particularly, we need to consider about how we could re-link the relationship between the urban and neighboring rural areas. So neighboring rural areas are providing the food, water, energy, and many other important ecosystem services to the urban areas. And the urban areas, the people living in the urban areas need to provide the money and human resources to the local rural areas so that the urban and rural could create the very strong interlinkages between the two. And this will promote the revitalization of decentralized and connected local societies. When I was invited to the University of Nairobi and delivered my speech at the University of Nairobi, I talked about the problem of aging and depopulation in the rural areas. And all the students at the University of Nairobi were so surprised. Oh, decreasing of population, which is so different from the situation in Kenya or in Nairobi. But in the longer period of time, you also need to face these issues. So overpopulation and underpopulation, it's sort of the both sides of coins. And we need to consider about the appropriate balance between the people and nature. And therefore, I think that we could utilize same scheme for both the depopulation country and even the populated countries. And so I think that this idea also could be utilized in your country, I hope, under the concept of revitalization of decentralized and connected local societies, and which will contribute to the revitalization of your country's rural areas. So Nairobi is now too big, and it's not appropriate from the aspect of global health. And so, the same as Tokyo, we need to revisit the conventional concept of urban planning or urban and rural planning. In order to promote the circulating and ecological sphere, we are now trying to establish the platform in various parts of the Japan by inviting of the different stakeholders in order to establish a CES, not just to ask the governmental people to be responsible for the establishment of this concept, but also we need to ask to the private sectors and even the civil society and scientists to join to this initiative to find out the best way of integrating rather fragmented way of revitalizing the rural areas and urban areas, and to create the sustainable society, which will be rather resilient against the various challenges, including the COVID-19. This is one of the examples that our institute, IGES, proposed to the government of Japan. By fully utilizing of local bioresources and to build the sustainable transportation system, not to use the fossil fuels, and to promote the urban and rural exchanges, and asking the urban people to support the rural areas. And rural areas could provide the various resources to the urban areas so that we could establish the decentralized sustainable society. And this idea is called the Satoyama CS. Satoyama refers to the traditional way of utilizing the natural resources in Japan. And under the name of the Satoyama Initiative, we are now promoting the international partnership. And then we could have the chance to organize this Satoyama Initiative International Partnership meeting a couple of years ago in Nairobi in collaboration with ICRAF, International Council for the Agroforestry. So Kenya is very familiar to us how we could further develop the concept of Satoyama. They are talking the same ideas by utilizing of the concept of agroforestry, but it's almost similar. And how we could keep the agroforestry zones or Satoyama zones in between the nature and people. And this will guarantee the safety environment against the public health. And this is one of the answer to the COVID-19. And we very much appreciate that after the COP20 next year, you could also join to this initiative. I'm very much looking forward to further discussing with all of you. So biodiversity shows the need for the synergies. We are now talking about our post-2020 global biodiversity framework. And then we need to consider about the synergy among the SDGs, climate change, disaster risk reduction, and the biodiversity conservation. And Satoyama is one of the initiatives, and this will contribute to the establishment of the localized circular ecological sphere, which we call in short, the CES. Post-2020 period, we have the various issues that we need to further develop. For example, previously, biodiverse people discussed that protected areas are more variable than the non-protected areas. But if you talk about the establishment of buffer zones, protected areas is of course important, but other effective area conservation measures, or OECMs in short, is also very important. But scientifically, this OECM was not highlighted. And therefore, in the post-2020 period, we need to highlight this aspect. And also we need to consider about the effective management of protected areas as well as the OECMs. And also we need to invite different stakeholders and different sectors for achieving of the ambitious global goals. And also, previously, biodiversity discussed only as the issues of biodiversity as indicated by the biodiversity loss. But biodiversity is a source of our life, and it's quite deeply related with the agriculture products, deeply related with the medical resources, and deeply related with other people's welfare, such as ecotourism, or utilizing of this space for improving of health and so on. And therefore, a multifaceted evaluation of the biodiversity aspect need to be addressed. And this is also related with the climate change mitigation and adaptation, or with the ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction. And this will also ask the inter-UN agency collaboration among, for example, CBD, Convention on Biological Resources, or FAO, or Food and Agriculture Organization, and UNESCO in Paris, and cultural heritage systems, and so on. So these are the lessons learned for the post-2020 framework. I'm very much looking forward to further discuss with the distinguished scientists at the University of Nairobi to further develop our ideas toward the integration of rather fragmented global challenges. We have the Satoyama Initiative, which aims to establish a society in harmony with nature, which was proposed in 2010 in Aichi Prefecture in Nagoya during the COP10 of the Convention on Biological Diversity. And this initiative will have a 10 years anniversary next year. And we are now discussing the post-Satoyama Initiative. And in post-Satoyama Initiative, we are aiming not only to discuss the biodiversity, but also want to include the climate change, particularly climate change adaptation, and sustainable production and consumption in our concept, and so that we could further continue our initiative. So this is a socio-ecological production landscape and seascapes that we discussed during the Satoyama Initiative, and we emphasize the importance of maintaining of the OECMs, as I already explained, and I would like to further develop this idea jointly with other collaborators on the various countries, in the various countries. And we have the project, for example, in Ghana, we are having the project to build the buffer zone by developing the cocoa farms, and aided by IPM and Rainforest Alliance certification, and so that the local people could get high income because of the added value agriculture products. And I would like to emphasize the importance of the collaboration between the IGES and Wangari Maathai Institute. And we, IGES, had a research project in the forest where the Wangari Maathai tried to plant the trees. And we try to understand the integrated variation, how the rehabilitation of the forest could change the ecosystem services, could change water resources, could change the ecological values. As a result, we could obtain that the ecological variation of forest resources by planting, increase the fuel, increase the food, and increase the medicinal resources, and also the building materials. But I would like to further emphasize the importance that these plantation activities could enhance the people's well-being. Particularly, some of the local people said that this could support the peace building of the local community. And exactly what late Wangari Maathai said with the name of the institute. She tried to combine the environmental issues with the peace issues. And this is quite right, because her plantation is giving us answer that we need to combine the environment issues with the peace issues. And this is the spirit of late Wangari Maathai, and I would like to continue this spirit as a distinguished chair of the Wangari Maathai Institute. And gave a very positive impact to the natural resources. By planting, you could see so many important aspects are enhanced: fuel, food, medicine, and seedlings. So these are the results of the tree plantation, which was led by the late Wangari Maathai. Finally, I would like to emphasize the importance of the achievement of SDGs, and the scientific community need to play a key role. So science and technology for innovation will be the key for the achievement of the SDGs. And we need to take a transition management pathways. And also, in order to achieve the very ambitious goal, we need to take a backcasting approach. And we have a various aspects that we need to further develop. Technological innovation, ICT, data science, system science, and social implementation, governance. These are the linkages between the achievement SDGs and the scientific community. And I would like to emphasize the importance of these aspects, because I also would like to ask the University of Nairobi to take this approach to play a key role, not only in Africa, but also in the global community, particularly the global academic community. And I had a chance to attend the webinar of the high-level political forum held in New York this year. Last year, I could attend physically to the meeting, but this year, because of the COVID, we could attend only virtually. And so I emphasize the importance of harnessing climate and SDG synergies to recover better and stronger from the COVID-19 pandemic. So even in New York, I try to emphasize the importance of combining the post-COVID-19 strategy with the achievement of SDGs. And we could share all these ideas with various stakeholders, as well as the various nations who could participate in this very important forum. And I would like to once again thank you very much for listening on my talk. And I would like to hear the voices from the two discussants, and I'm very much looking forward to further discussing with you for the advancement of research after the celebration of the 50 years of the establishment of the university, and to consider about what we can do from now on to another 50 years. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Takeuchi, for that wonderful presentation and thought-provoking. Just for information, we will have the two discussants, and then that will be followed by Q&A. And then, of course, after that, we will end our webinar. I would like to call upon Professor Ratemo Michieka to make his comments, remarks, his presentation. Professor Michieka.
Thank you very much, moderator, really, for the very nice afternoon presentation and evening in Japan. And thank you so much, Professor Takeuchi, for really opening up a discussion that is heavily weighted and which will affect countries like ours as we develop. My comment really will augur at the main reason why Professor Wangari Maathai has had a major impact in the country and worldwide, having worked with her as my Minister of Environment in NEMA, National Environment Management Authority. And I would like to say this, that she really used to emphasize physically peace and environmental conservation and saving that environment which we find. And that the future lies on what we do now, and we have borrowed that beauty, water, rivers, lakes, forests from the future generations. With the COVID-19 problems, some of these amenities are being affected. And in particular, energy, peace is being disturbed quite a bit. We have problems of hardships, uneven erosion, droughts, again. But COVID now, having come in, has got its own bad impact. Incidentally, there may be some one or two positive at this particular point in time, positive impact of the COVID-19, particularly the air pollution in various cities, etc. But that would actually be short-lived. And Professor Takeuchi, you highlighted carbon dioxide and the accumulation of greenhouse gases. My discussion participants will really augur on four major sustainable development goals. And I would like to start with the one on climate goal action number 13, which simply says that the global warming, science, technology, greenhouse gases will accumulate. And the Prof, you said clearly that if we continue like this, there may not be no reduction. If anything, there might be increment of greenhouse gases. Again, like I said, this has been affected. At the present time, we may think we have lesser concentration of those greenhouse gases, but as things start shaping up, it might pick up and go higher during the extreme weather events. Like I said, drought, flooding, and the widespread destabilization of global food and economy. We may not be seeing specific environmental related unrest, but as I said, time goes on, hunger, drought will bring in issues on environmental problems. The key thing here is that peace can be impacted badly if, for example, developing nations suffer the lack of adequate food production and adequate food supply. This virus could also create some opportunities that we might actually capitalize on. Prepare well, get ready for any other eventuality. This may not be the only one in society and in life, whether we talk about 2030, 2050, etc. But particularly for the African continent, where continuous problems of energy production and food availability, malnutrition is almost constant. Wangari Maathai Institute of Peace and Environment really came up with ideas of seeing that any negotiations on issues affecting the environment are settled amicably. And as a country, we are seeing some of this being done, particularly the Mau forest that has got a lot of problems with that. Therefore, climate change action goal really is one of those that we must look at, and it is shared very ably by what Professor you hinted and said about afforestation, food availability, commitments to the smaller local communities, and the very nice schematic graphs you got, schematic tables you got on what should be done from the local small areas to the national, to the entire world. The second goal I thought I would actually mention, I picked up about four, like I said, four, is life on land. What do we do? Diseases coming up, zoonotic diseases such as COVID-19, which continue to rise, and as the world continues to destroy wild habitats. Some people are using wild game as food, others are using them as pets, and those diseases which translocate from the wild game to the livestock animals, eventually to the humans, will present some further pandemic outbreaks, both globally and nationally. Natural habitats being disturbed continuously again will affect game to go loose and affect our lives. So really what I say about life on land would affect both game and man. How about life below the water goal, the water areas? We have been talking a lot about the blue economy. Everybody's now talking about the blue economy, but the destruction and degradation of our oceans, natural marine and coastal areas is again not left. There are problems. Ocean currents, ecosystems, pollution again in the high seas is something to start thinking about. Protection of those coastal areas, particularly when it comes to industry, food, medicine, is something that we must again worry about. Life below the sea, life below the waters of any kind, whether small lakes, small rural water areas, has got an impact on us. Excess nutrients runoff in what we do, particularly in agriculture, has got problems on eutrophication, harmful algae blooms, as well as potential increase in the number of dead zones, ends up in the oceans, in the waters, and the UNEP's immediate guidance, which is located in Nairobi really, is to continue talking about safe chemicals, safe environment, pollutants of some kind, which are so many of them, particularly the persistent organic pollutants. Management of those becomes an issue. COVID-19 touches on some of these. Let me say one big thing here, colleagues, that the plastic waste, which we think to be controlling, for example, in Kenya, a lot of it is ending up in the waters, whether fresh, oceans, lakes, etc. We have those problems as plastics on our water bodies. So really, life below the water again becomes a concern that we all should take note, not only those persons who live or stay within our coastal areas or along the coastal areas of the world. The last goal is number 12, which I thought I would mention is here, consumption and responsible consumption of any production we get out. I said at the very beginning that these resources we have, all the resources we have, is really for the future generations. And the key thing is that eat and let live, or live and let live. Let what we use be continuously sustained, used equitably. And that is what the late Lauret winner said, that you must live and know that we have just borrowed a future. So really the utilization of all the production systems that we have must be financed and change lifestyles to know that we don't destroy, take over everything that we find and utilize. Closed borders occasionally may help, but could also create some tension at some point, so that we now threaten peace. changes must be seen to protect what we actually produce and therefore allow for replenishing or not complete destruction of what we get. Working positively, thinking positively, making sure that everybody who uses a material or a productive substance from whether land or water is actually safe. Our 50 years of celebration today of the University of Nairobi, which was born in past July 1970, as the Vice Chancellor told us, really will teach us lessons, and that as we celebrate our Professor Wangari Maathai, I do hope that all the work that is being done will help all of us to understand, contain, and also use what we have sustainably. Mr. Moderator, I thought I would just give some summation on that, hoping that our key speaker will pick from there as we allow for the other questions and comments to come through. There is a lot I would say, but it was my really thought of pleasure having worked as a junior environmental officer in NEMA under the very renowned Professor Wangari Maathai. I stop there, Mr. Moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. I see a lot of connection between what you have said and what Professor Takeuchi, presented to us. There is a lot in common. And thank you very much for that. May I now invite Professor Robert Rukwaro, the second discussant. Professor Rukwaro.
Thank you a lot for inviting me to this session. I think what Professor Takeuchi has presented is of valuable to the globe, to the nations, and to the local community. It is quite well presented. It has picked quite a range of models in environment that are probably applicable into different localities. What I want to talk more about is about urban planning and design, which is Sustainable Development Goal number 11. But before I do that, I want to recognize that I had worked with Wangari Maathai for some time when she was alive, and she was focused on peace, justice, and environment. And why I'm saying this is because she was able to save a heritage site that actually had been grabbed by certain individuals. And how he did it was through peace, because there was no time there was war. That is Mukure wa Nyagabanga site. And she was able to reform that site, that heritage site, which actually today people celebrate her for having retrieved it from the jaws of grabbers. So I think she was very focused on nature. And I think that site, the first thing she did when she got it was actually to say, let's plant trees, the whole site. And the trees were now, they are big trees. And I think that was quite a major contribution to Agikoyo culture. Let me now go to your presentation. I think your presentation was quite focused, and it captures the most contemporary issues that relate with the environment. You have been able to feature in different forums and come up with certain positions that can help the nations to actually develop further. On the issue of urban planning and design, which I want to focus on, because myself, I'm an architect, and we deal with buildings. I think one of the areas that has been affected most by coronavirus is urban settings, urban environments. And one of the things that in the protocol of how to prevent ourselves from this virus is to keep distance. When you look at our environment in urban areas, they actually congested. For example, in Nairobi, about 60% or more of the population lives in slums. What that one means is that these people are closely knitted together where they are staying. And that makes it difficult to control the virus, as we have been told. So there are certain things that the urban areas that needs really to be put right in the form of how we plan tomorrow's cities in view of such tragedies like this virus. And I think one of them is we have to look again at the planning regulations, planning standards, and planning, how plan is being done at different levels, at the level of neighborhoods, at the level of cities, and at the level of actually mega cities. So we really need to look again to see how we can address the issues of distance. Considering that this disease is not going anywhere, probably, then we have to reform our behaviors, the way we do planning, and the way we actually stay together as a people. The other thing about planning, about now the design, is the unit. The units that we design as place our dwellings, we didn't need to look at them again. Since these spaces, as we are aware, today, why we are not going back to school, most of our Kenyan people and the students, is because of the congestion in our schools. So there is really need to rethink again about how do we design classrooms to decongest. So we didn't need to come up with the proper ratios, if it's what they are saying now, or that a distance of 1.5, and that will require a lot of resources. That's the one thing that we can know. It requires a lot of resources. We have to look again, how do we create compatibility of the needs and the outcome, that we didn't need to look about it again. Still, it goes also to the hostels and the hospitality areas and so on. So there's a lot of the built environment we really need to look if we are going to control this COVID or to live with it and continue working and creating our development, meeting our economic development agendas in terms of capital building for our livelihoods. So that's quite important, that the tomorrow's city must actually reflect the protocols of COVID as we are discussing them in the current standards. I think the other thing that has also come out very clearly between the urban setting and rural setting, when there was lockdown, there was a lot of debate of how the city be fed. Now that you have locked down the city, how will we get food? And I think that rural urban linkage is something that we really need to readdress. How do we get food in the cities? The rural areas are our hinterlands in terms of the life that we need, the certain lives that we need in the cities. So we really need to look at that linkage, the pre-urban areas. How do we define our pre-urban areas so that they become part and parcel of what we are looking forward as proper planning for our cities? And I think some of the points that our presenter did actually tries to create some of these linkages, because one of the aspects that he really emphasized is that we need a very integrative planning, integrative way of looking at issues, integrative way of how people live, how people interact at different levels, at the global level, at the national level, and also at the local levels. That issue of integrated action towards sustainability, I think, is a concept that really needs to be moved forward for any development that will be taking place within our cities. And considering also that tomorrow's city is where majority of the population will be living, I think the focus of how the cities should be designed comes into fore as a major aspect of how can you create an integrative city, rural, pre-urban, looking at open spaces in the cities, looking at the built forms in the cities, looking at the transportation in the cities, and all other sectors that come in urbanization. We really need to look at that so that we are able to fight a disaster like what has hit us of COVID-19. And the other thing that I want to finish up with is that this disease that has come into the whole world within a very short time is actually telling us that we are vulnerable, that nature controls, and nature heals itself when it's disturbed. So we don't know whether this disease actually is coming to heal nature. And probably one thing that you saw during the early lockdowns is that animals were celebrating. The natural resources that are out there in the forests and other places were actually looked more vibrant in terms of the way they felt man is not disturbing them. So I think we have to revisit how does man interact with nature so that this disturbance that is catastrophic of a disease like this and other calamities we are seeing in the world can actually be minimized to a level that the recovery of disaster becomes easy. And the other thing that I think the presenter also came out very clearly is the issue of resilient. Resilient is an area that we really need to address and entrench it in our designs, because resilient in short terms means that we are aware of disasters coming anytime and we are prepared for that disaster. That preparedness for a disaster, that preparedness of how we do the recovery is really a very important thing. And I think it has been shown by this disease, we have really to reconstruct the way we had conventional life and see how better can we control disasters by reconstructing our behavior and our lives the way we live them. And I think, moderator, I can stop there and allow other presenters to continue with the debate. Thank you a lot.
Thank you very much, Professor Rukwaro. You have emphasized issues of the built environment. You have also talked about the urban-rural linkages. And the big question being, how can we build sustainable communities? And all those aspects you have mentioned are related to what the previous speakers talked about. So thank you very much, Professor Rukwaro. I now would like to request Professor John Muthama, Deputy Director at Wangari Maathai Institute, to perform the next segment of our webinar. Professor, this is Q&A session, so Professor Muthama.
Thank you very much, Professor Wangari. This is our session on questions and answers. I had put in a request there that you could post your questions so that we can have the opportunity to discuss them. But as we do so, that as the audience does so, maybe I pose one question to Professor Takeuchi. You mentioned about the nested commons, and just want to hear your thoughts about nested commons and what you put as the integration of particularly IP-base and IPCC, because it's a very interesting way of looking at the reports that come from international community. So maybe you could hear your thoughts about this aspect of nested commons, as you mentioned it, Professor Takeuchi.
Yes, thank you very much for your very interesting question. With regard to the relationship between the IPCC and IPBES, as I already mentioned in my lecture, that these two are composed of the two rather independent communities, and there was not much discussion between the two. But I'm saying that this is not appropriate because, for example, if you talk about the climate change adaptation, you cannot ignore the importance of biodiversity and ecosystem services. And therefore, I'm insisting the importance of starting the dialogue between the IPCC and the IPBES. Particularly, one thing that IPCC need to revisit is the importance of transitional knowledge. IPCC was based on the scientific knowledge, peer-reviewed journal articles. And this is very important, of course. But this may exclude or ignore the importance of local traditional knowledge. But when we look at the IPBES Biodiversity Convention, traditional knowledge, indigenous knowledge, will be the very important aspect rather than the IPCC. And therefore, the traditional knowledge discussion need to be readdressed to both the two different discussions. And now I'm very pleased that these two global scientific communities have started to discuss about the linkage between the two. For example, my institute, the Institute for Global Environment Strategies, we have groups of climate change, and we have groups of biodiversity. And before I joined to the IGES as a president, they discuss separately. So I said to them that it is not appropriate. So you need to discuss between the two, and also need to discuss with others. For example, city task force. It's very important to materialize their ideas. So the current situation is moving slightly to the different dimensions. As I mentioned, UNDESA is trying to combine the SDGs with the climate actions. And many participants insisted to combine the biodiversity discussion as well as the disaster risk reduction. And so now we are ready to prepare for the integrated discussion among the different initiatives. But from the scientific point of view, it is more important that scientists need to take a holistic approach. So if you look at the journal, all these names of the journals are fragmented. For example, the engineering, civil engineering, mechanical engineering, and economics, law, politics, and so on. And therefore, I tried to establish the new journal more than 10 years ago, which is called the Sustainability Science. Why I tried to establish? I wanted to invite such an integrated paper provided by the scientists, and to allow them to the opportunity to send article to my journal. Either they are from the natural science or the social science and humanities, or from the engineering or from medical science. If you are interested in the integration, and you can submit the paper to my journal. So now the situation has been improved. And I'm very pleased that already IPCC and IPBES started to discuss. And many of the scientists, previously they worked separately, but some of the scientists are now joining to both the global initiatives and both the global convention processes. So the situation has been improved, but this is a basic structure of the scientific community. So all of us are living in the silos, and it is very difficult to move from the silos and try to hand in hand with the other academic disciplines. So this is easy to say, but it's very difficult to materialize. But this is a challenge. And I hope that the University of Nairobi will take this approach, a holistic approach, to try to combine rather fragmented approach, either in biodiversity, in climate change, or in environment, or the social activities, or the economic growth, and so on. So these are the issues that we need to further address for the development of our society. Thank you very much.
I think Professor Takeuchi connected with that. There is the aspect of education, because also the education has to have that integrated approach. Yes. Do you agree?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, particularly Professor Mungai, you experienced our new campus in Kashiwa.
Yes.
This is one of the ways to integrate rather fragmented academic disciplines.
I agree. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question from the audience. I see Professor Nyagito would like to probably pose a question. Professor Nyagito.
Thank you, Chair. I posted my question there to Professor Takeuchi. I was wondering whether we have a disconnect between technological and social systems innovations. And if we have, what could be the problem? Is it culture? Is it culture? Does culture embed that adoption of technological innovations to fit into social systems innovations? And if that is the case, then how can we intervene to ensure harmony of those two innovations, that we are able to have a sustainable society at local level? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very important and a very fundamental question. If we talk about the technological innovation or even innovation, many people are thinking that technology, innovative technology, can solve all the problems, but it is not true. How we could appropriately use many advanced technology in our society. Once this technology is accepted by the society, and this technology will be very effective to transform our society. But for example, in Japan, we have the Science and Technology Agency. Their focus is only on how they could ask the natural scientists or engineers to try to find out the innovative way of technology. This is very important, innovation. But how innovation could be utilized in the society? This is another very important aspect. And therefore, I'm emphasizing the importance of a social system innovation. And then social system innovation need to be combined with the technological innovation. And last year, I could attend Science and Technology for Innovation, which was organized by the United Nations during the high-level political forum. I could have a chance to deliver my talk in front of all the member states. And what I emphasize is this point, so that you should consider the innovation with much, much wider concept. And advanced technological innovation is, of course, the core of the wide range of innovation. But this core could not fully utilize without acceptance of the society. In order to be supported by the society, and there is some process of accepting by the society, and therefore technological innovation need to be combined with a social system innovation. That is the essence what I wanted to share with you. And I think that transdisciplinary research by combining of natural science, engineering, social science, and even the humanities. And sometimes we are saying that arts is also very important for the humanity. And lifestyles is also important. All these aspects need to be considered. And then in the center, there will be a technological innovation. And if we take this approach, and then technological innovation will be appropriately utilized in our society for the advancement of society. So this is the idea that I would like to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You are muted, Professor Mudama.
So, sorry, thank you. Yeah, another question from the audience is about global carbon budgets. And also another one on global warming. So is there something that we may need to do differently? Are we on the right track globally? Or we may need to readjust so that we can see the global initiatives on global warming, combating climate change. What are your views?
Thank you very much for this very, very difficult question. I have no answer at this moment, but I can say that a global community need to pay more attention and need to give more effort to raise their ambitious activities to mitigate the climate change. As I mentioned, now based on the Paris Agreement, the member states are discussing how much CO2 reduction we can reduce in a shorter period of time. And as indicated by the voluntary national contribution. If you just sum up of these voluntary local, voluntary national contributions, unfortunately, all the sum of this contribution are far to the achievement of even the 2.0 degrees. And global warming will continue even if we take this approach. And therefore, drastic reduction of the CO2 is essential. But how we could get the consensus to reduce this ambitious reduction of the CO2 emission? This is a problem. But there are some hope. Many people are saying it is very difficult to reduce in a shorter period of time. But they are clearly saying in the longer period of time, we could drastically reduce the CO2 emissions. And the EU already declared to make a net zero countries by the year 2050. And 2050 is not so far from now on, but they declared. And even China, they declared to make the country to be a net loss by the year 2060 yesterday. So declaration in the longer period of time, they can express the ambitious goals. But the problem is the shorter period of time. Even the Japan, it is very much difficult to increase the goals from the current voluntary national contribution, because still many companies, for example, the steel company, are willing to use the fossil fuels. And they are considering, if we prohibit to use the fossil fuel, and steel company will move from Japan to China, and will lose the economic value of the big enterprises. So this discussion is still very popular, unfortunately. So in order to change the society, it's very, very difficult in a shorter period of time. Longer period of time, it's rather easy to say the ambitious goals, but shorter period of time, it's very difficult. And therefore, I am saying today in my today's lecture, that COVID-19 is a big shock to the society. And many people realize that change could happen. And this size of the change in terms of reducing our CO2 emissions is exactly the same as 1.5 degrees. But many people are thinking that it is not possible to continue this type of lifestyle and economic activities. So they are trying to restart their normal life, restart their normal economic situation, activities. But my question is, either we will take the way that we used to take, or we could take another approach to decouple the CO2 emissions from the economic activities and social activities. And this is the challenge, but at the same time, now, because of the COVID-19, it will be the great opportunity for us to rethink about our society, to think how we could decouple the economic growth from the use of fossil fuels, and as a result, producing of CO2 emissions. So I have, at this moment, as I already said, no concrete answer. But I can say that if we could not use this opportunity, we will never achieve our ambitious goals. And in the later, maybe next generation or next generation will suffer from the consequences of global warming. And so it is the responsibility of our generation to pass our environment to the next generation. And therefore, we need to start our activities immediately. And time is not enough for us to wait for the actions that global community can take. So we need to start, and we need to raise our voices to decouple the economic growth from the global warming, and try to combine the post-COVID-19 recovery with the establishment of a sustainable society, including the society, decarbonized society. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A final question. From your presentation, the emphasis of modeling is very clear, that for us to understand where we are at in the future and where we are heading to, we need to understand the interconnectedness of the systems. And this now, at the bottom of it, is data. We need to have credible long-term data. In your view, how do we involve communities in at least having data that would help inform our understanding to this modeling? Because especially in developing countries, data issues always become a main challenge. Thank you. And that's a final.
Yes, thank you very much. There are several points that we need to discuss. If you talk about the achievement of the SDGs, there are many indicators. But if you look at the current data situation in the developing countries, not all the data are well equipped. And so you must start from the collecting of the data to assess the achievement of SDGs goals and targets. It is quite tough challenge for those who are belonging to the developing countries, including the countries in Africa. So international collaboration is a key to fill the gap. There are many countries already well equipped with advanced data systems. And also, for example, I recently asked my friend, who is the expert in remote sensing, to support us to understand the current situation of the tree planting activities in Kenya, and so that we can scientifically assess the impacts of the tree plantation by Professor Wangari Maathai. And it is very difficult for the local community to assess by utilizing of a remote sensing. But this is a kind of the subject for international cooperation. So this is one thing on the larger scale. But on the local scale, I think that the important thing is international collaboration, but between the countries, universities in the developed countries and universities in the local, in that countries. For example, I would like to introduce some example. I had a 5-year project under the umbrella of the SEPLS, supported by JICA and JST, and we conducted field research work in the northern part of Ghana. And there is a university located in Tamale, northern part of Ghana, and it's a base for the education in that district. And this university is University of Development Studies. And we are collaborating with them. And they know quite well about the local communities. And sometimes it's very difficult for us to communicate with the local people because they cannot understand the English. And so the local scientists could play as a translator to communicate between us and the local people. And then as a result, we finally got a very important result. But the question was how the local people could understand the results of our research. And then one of my former students, who is now working as a lecturer at the university, and he proposed to create a drama. Northern part of Ghana, I think even in Kenya, you're having a custom of dancing and singing during the festival. So we tried to make a drama and create this drama and ask the local people to play and dance so that they could understand what was the previous situation how the climate change gave the impact on the local community and how they could be responding to the climate change and to enhance the resilience of the local community. And it was a very successful result. And we were highly evaluated by the JICA and JST, the SEPLS project. We could get the highest score. It was not so easy for the Japanese scientists to get this type of the result with the local people. And this is one of the examples how we could collaborate with the local people and how we could translate the scientific knowledge to the local knowledge. And they could combine also their local traditional knowledge with the local solution and against the climate change and also against the floodings. So these are the efforts that we should further develop. And it is not easy and it takes some time, but this is a way that we could fill the gap between the current situation of the knowledge and the knowledge that we need to establish in order to tackle on the various challenges on the local scale. And also, I would like to emphasize the importance of the multi-stakeholder participation. In that case, we could invite a local government, universities, local people, and also the extension groups, and so on. And so this will be a very good experience for me. And I would like to further develop this idea if I have some time for me to conduct a field research work in the future. But I'm not sure if I can do, but because of my age. But I'm always pleasure to work with African people in the local community.
Thank you, Professor Takeuchi, for very insightful responses and words of knowledge. So this brings us to the end of the question and answer session. Back to Professor Mungai, the moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Modama. Thank you, Professor Takeuchi, and thank you, participants. That was quite interactive. I don't know whether the discussants would have wished to say something regarding the questions which have been asked. Professor Michieka, do you want to say something?
Really, I think mine is to simply say this, that as a country with a very high population coming up and demanding on a lot of natural resources, we need to put in efforts and really go to education and teach people to participate, to ensure that they understand what the environment holds in the future, and ensure that whenever we have any issues, it is us, ourselves, to ensure we cater and take care of those problems. I think, like I said earlier, like the key speaker said, we must conserve what we have. We must make sure that whatever we deplete, whatever we use, whatever is worth anything, must be conserved and equitable sharing with the other people. Otherwise, I thank you so much and look forward to similar interactions in the future. Thank you very much indeed, Professor Takeuchi, and wish you
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Professor Rukwaro, you have a comment? Professor Rukwaro?
The implication of climate change on the lives of the people. I think the way it is going is such that the trend is upward. It's not coming down, even with many protocols having been addressed and trying to come up with solutions. So the question is still the sea rise is continuing and some cities are disappearing. the urbanization is continuing and more slums are being created. So at the end of it, as Professor Michieka said, don't we need to control the population? Because I think the pressure is in the population. The population wants to get more space, but then it has implication on the climate change. So how do we put a stop? Probably that's a question I could have asked, but I think it's something that the debate will continue, because I can see man extincting himself naturally. So I think we have really to tread carefully on the population, because when one looks at the trend of population and the exploitation of natural resources, there is a relationship. So unless we bring down the population and or we see how we can handle the issue of population, I think the issue that we are addressing seems not to be having a lot of impact. This issue of climate is not having a lot of impact that is actually curtailing the destruction of nature. And that's why I said in the beginning, probably nature will come and heal itself by extincting man, because it's destroying it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Rukwaro. You have brought up a very controversial subject of population control. Let us see whether we can use the ideas from Professor Takeuchi to see how we manage the population.
I think he mentioned it and said that this country will come to bear and realize that there will be a time when there will be less people. Now there are very many people where that actually happens. And then the competition against everything takes place. So that is a very heavy discussion that you cannot put aside at some point in the future, sir. Thank you. Thank you again, Professor Mungai.
Correct. Thank you very much. I think we have come to the end, or almost to the end of our webinar. I would like to request the Dean of the Faculty of Agriculture, Professor Nyangito Moses, to give a vote of thanks. Professor Nyangito.
Thank you, Chair. May I take this opportunity to extend our vote of thanks to our Vice Chancellor, Professor Stephen Kiama, for taking time off his busy schedule to come and launch this special webinar that has been enlightening and very stimulating. We thank him and we wish him the very best as he continues to steer our university. Our distinguished chair of Wangari Maathai Institute, Professor Takeuchi, you have done us proud. This is a fantastic webinar. As an ecologist, I wish to remind you this, or echo this. We cannot afford fragmented landscapes and cultures. We require connected landscapes and cultures. And I am happy that COVID-19 has reminded us that we cannot be in our own cocoons, but we must work together to overcome the challenges we face to be able to create sustainable societies. Thank you, sir, for this stimulating presentation and discussion. Our discussant, Professor Ratemo Michieka, who is also the president of the Africa Science, Research and Innovation Council. Thank you for your time, for having come to this webinar and for your valuable inputs to the discussion. Professor Robert Rukwaro, our principal, thank you so much for finding time to come to assist us discuss this important topic and your valuable dimensions on urban planning and design in creating sustainable cities and societies. Professor Mtama, who led April, our Q and answer session, we also thank you so much for that valuable time. This webinar would have not succeeded without you, the participants. We value each of you and your time. Thank you for your participation. And as a college and faculty, we look forward to you participating more in our next series of presentations as we mark University of Nairobi at 50. Our dear Director, Professor David Mungai, thank you for running ahead of time. Thank you for organizing this particular webinar. Thank you for getting us these valuable and eminent presenters and discussants. We wish you the very best as you continue to steer from Wangari Maathai Institute to greater heights and giving your contribution to the college and to the university. With those remarks, I beg to stop there and wish everybody a good evening until we see you next time in our next series of webinars from the college and from the faculty. Thank you. Back to Chair.
Thank you, Professor Nyangito, for those wonderful words, quite comprehensive. I think, as I said, our webinar is over. I wish everybody the very best. Professor Takeuchi, it is good night for you. Yeah, we are just beginning the evening. Asanteni sana.
Thank you.
Arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert.